And a very good evening to you, and welcome to today's edition of Politics 101, Tuesday evening, the beginning of the week. And like to welcome everyone down. Those of you who are joining us from Guyana, very special welcome to you. And those of you who are joining us from the diaspora, a very special welcome also to you. Those of you from joining us from the Caribbean, the wider Caribbean, our Caribbean, as I like to say, welcome down to Politics 101. We are, of course, one people, one Caribbean, and of course, we are all Guyanese, and we are all entitled to the benefits of citizenship in Guyana, the benefits of citizenship in Guyana. Welcome, those of you who are joining us from Cayenne, French Guyana, Paramaribo, Suriname. Welcome, those of you who are joining us from Europe. Lots of you are joining us from the United Kingdom, Great Britain, England. You're all of those. Welcome to Politics 101. Some of our brothers and sisters contacted me from France to say that they do join us from France. Welcome if you're joining us from France. Good evening, everyone. By now, everybody knows that, you share the link and let everyone know that we are on Politics 101. We're going to be talking tonight with Lincoln Lewis. We're going to be talking with Lincoln Lewis tonight. He's going to join us a little bit later. And we are going to be talking with Lincoln about what's happening to Rickford Burke. As you know, the government has issued a second wanted bulletin for Brother Rickford. And we are asking the question, why are they persecuting the brother? Why are they persecuting the brother? There must be a reason. There must be a reason that they're going after Rickford Burke. I have not seen posts, but I understand a government minister made a post today blaming Rickford Burke and myself for the accident at the Demerara Harbor Bridge. I think making reference to the fact that I had called on people to undermine the government, and so the accident at the Demerara Harbor Bridge was because of my calling on people to undermine the government, and Rickford Burke calling on people to resist the government. Good evening, and welcome to Politics 101. So we are going to be talking about the persecution of Brother Rickford. You know what bothers me with these people? What bothers me with these people is they claim that we have no support. They claim that we influence nobody. Yet, whenever there is something in the country, we are responsible for it. They're either fooling themselves or they think the rest of us are fools. If, as they're saying, we don't have any support, we don't influence anybody, then let it be. Let us be. But here you have an accident at the Harbor Bridge, and David Hines is responsible. Rickford Burke is responsible. Good evening and welcome to Politics 101. Welcome to Politics 101. Good evening, Latel. Thank you very much. Marlene, as usual, is with us. Lynette, Pamela, welcome to Politics 101. Lincoln Lewis is going to join us later on to talk about the persecution of Brother Rickford. Of course, we do not see it as prosecution, but persecution of the brother. You don't have to agree with everything Rickford says. You don't have to agree with everything I say or any political commentator or political activist for that matter. The fact of the matter is that there is such a thing as free speech. The supporters of the PPP and the PPP itself like to talk about democracy. And they confine democracy to elections. They confine democracy to elections. Democracy is more than election. It's more than election. The American government made a statement on International Democracy Day. I think the ambassador, making the point that democracy is more than election. The PPP confines democracy to election. That is formal democracy. Democracy is much more than that. Democracy is about human rights. A government can be elected fairly to office and govern undemocratically. Now, this government here has not been fairly elected. It was installed in office, as the Americans have said, not me. There was a disputed election, as the Americans have said, not me. You see, the PPP people tell us they know the elections were free and fair because the Americans and the British and the Canadians and all the observers said that elections were free and fair. Fair enough. But the Americans have also said that elections were disputed. So if you're relying on the Americans for authenticity, well, the Americans have said that the elections were disputed and that the government was installed. I tend to agree with the Americans. It is a disputed election. The dispute has gone to the courts. The elections are inconclusive. But the PPP is saying that they won the election and democracy was saved because they won the election. Well, democracy is more than election. Election is an important aspect of democracy, but it is one aspect of democracy. You can win an election fairly, which the PPP has not done. It's an inconclusive election. But you can win an election fairly and yet govern undemocratically. There is no automatic democratic governance that flows from a free and fair election. Hitler got elected at a free and fair election. So people remember that. But democracy is more than election. Democracy is also about human rights. You can be elected fairly, but if you deny citizens their civil liberties, their civil rights, then you are tampering with human rights. Democracy is also about human rights. In societies like ours, which are ethnicized societies, racialized societies, an important plank of democracy is racial equality. You can't have a democracy with racial inequality. In South Africa, during the apartheid era, there was democracy for whites. There was not any democracy for blacks and brown people. There was democracy, but it was democracy for whites. In America, from the birth of the nation in 1789, up until 1964, with the passage of the Civil Rights Act, there was democracy for whites, no democracy for blacks in the United States of America. Human rights is an important aspect of democracy. In racialized societies, racial equality, meaning equality before the law, is very important. You can have the law, but if there is no equality before the law, meaning that if the law doesn't work in an equitable way, then you don't have a democracy. What about economic democracy? That is the distribution of wealth. Is the state distributing wealth equitably? Yes, you can have a government that is elected at a fair election, but if it is not distributing the common resources equitably, then it is violating democracy. There is no ethnic democracy. What about access to information? Access to the press, the media? Is the Chronicle the state media? Not the government. The Chronicle is not owned by the government. The Chronicle, NCN, they are owned by the state, not the government. The government manages the Chronicle and the NCN. It manages them on behalf of the state. And what is the state? The state are those institutions that are created by the Constitution. The police and the army, they are the coercive arms of the state. Chronicle and NCN, they are the information arms of the state. And we, the people, are part of the state. Do we have equal access to the state institutions? If you do not have access to information, then you're violating democracy. Democracy is not just elections. What about extrajudicial killings? Is the state protecting its citizens from being killed by agents of the state without due process. Every citizen has a right to due process. It's there in the Constitution, which means that you are presumed innocent until found guilty by a court of law. The police is not a court of law. The police doesn't have a right to slaughter any citizen unless, of course, that citizen puts the police in a position where the police has no other alternative than to use undue force. But the police is not the court. The police is supposed to arrest the citizen. And then the citizen has to have his day or her day in court. The police, nor the DPP, nor the Minister of Home Affairs, they do not have constitutional or legal right to take life. Our citizens guaranteed the right to life. That is democracy also. The right to life is an important pillar of democracy. We're talking here tonight. We're talking here tonight. Democracy is not confined to elections. You hear people say, oh, we saved democracy during the 5 months. During the 5 months, there was an electoral impasse, as we have always had. You go right back to 1961, when there had to be a by-election at Houston, that's see there. The court found that the PPP did not win that constituency. And there had to be a by-election. And from 61 to 2020, we have always had disputed elections in Guyana. What made 2020 different was that both parties decided to skin up the other one. The PPP said that what they saw at Ashmin was not reflected on their statements of goal. The coalition said, let's go into the boxes. Let's don't just say their votes in the boxes. Let's go into the boxes. That is what the recount was about. The recount was a settlement of an election petition. Let's go into the boxes. And lo and behold, when they went into the boxes, they found a mountain of irregularities, what the coalition called anomalies. And Mr. Lowenfield said, I cannot declare this election. I cannot declare this election. Vincent Alexander and myself said, look, since the election cannot be declared, let us have an interim government. And let that interim government run the country while GCOM renovates itself, and that we can have a proper election. Vincent also suggested that maybe the places where, like in Region 4, you had those 46 boxes, let us do a by-election in those areas. The PPP rejected all of those. And so they were installed via a disputed election. The American government has said that. It's not just David Hines and opposition supporters and sympathizers are saying it. The Americans who were instrumental in installing the government said it was an disputed election and the government was installed. So the government is calling itself a democratic government. You can't be a democratic government when your government arose out of a disputed contest in which one side was bullied out of office. How does David Hines know they were bullied out of office? The American Secretary of State threatened sanctions and may have imposed sanctions on one side in an election that was not called. Normally you sanction people after an election. These are sanctions before an election result. So when you are sanctioning people on one side, you are hounding them out of government and you're giving the government to the other side. There was a change in the government in America, change in the presidency. And the new government said, maybe after a review, they said, this government was installed in a disputed election. So you have two actions by the US government. One action was to engineer regime change using the threat of sanctions and maybe actual sanctions. And then later on, the very American government was to say the elections were disputed and that the government was not elected, it was installed. They didn't say the government was not elected. They said the government was installed. The inference is that if you were installed, it means you were not properly elected. So the PPP is now mounting a commission of inquiry, into the election. First of all, the PPP is a contestant. Such an inquiry should not be done by the government. That the government is a government of one party that was part of the election. You're asking a contestant or the contestant, one contestant, has taken it upon itself to mount an inquiry into an election that it was part of and that it was accused, it is being accused of tampering with. The PPP is accused of tampering. The coalition is accused of tampering. Either the coalition or the PPP should be mounting an inquiry. Any review or investigation of what happened should first and foremost come from GCOM. GCOM has the power to do it. If GCOM has the power to call a recount, you're telling me GCOM does not have the power to inquire into an election that it conducted? That's where a review of the election should come from, first and foremost, from GCOM. And if GCOM doesn't want to do it, then the president and the leader of the opposition should sit down and say, look, there were problems with these elections. Let us have an impartial inquiry. But the PPP by itself, or the coalition by itself, cannot conduct an inquiry. They were participants. And both of them were accused of tampering with the election. The police have corroborated evidence that was unearthed by the coalition. I always like to point out, the PPP said there was an attempt to rig the election. The coalition says there was actual rigging because the voters list was manipulated. Statutory documents, statutory, mean legal. That's what statutory mean. Legal documents were missing. How can you verify an election outside of legal documents? Where are those documents? So this notion about democracy is wider than election. Elections do not necessarily lead to democracy. Mr. Hitler was elected, and it led to fascism, genocide. Mr. Botha and de Klerk and the others in South Africa, they were elected, but they were elected by whites. America had elected governments right through slavery. And when slavery ended in 1865 in America, we had another 100 years of Jim Crowism. America was electing governments. Elected governments are not synonymous with democracy. What does one person, one vote mean? What does one person, one vote lead to? One person, one vote. First of all, who are the persons? So, in our circumstances, elections are more, democracy is more than elections. Human rights, economic democracy, economic equality, equal access to the media, in particular the state media, state-owned media. The right to life, meaning the right not to be gunned down extrajudicially. The right of women to be home with their children at nights rather than be out there guarding people's money and property. The right to raise your child, to be home with your child at night, is a human right. Where is the legislation that says to guard these companies, these security guard companies, that women should not be scheduled to work at night? Where is the legislation? It's a violation of the human rights of women. What about workers' rights? What about the right to bargain? Unions' right to bargain. That's a right that workers died for. Guyana was invaded in 1953 because the original PPP government passed legislation that gave workers the right to collective bargaining. The British dispatched troops after that vote in the National Assembly. The right for workers to is an important plank of democracy. A woman's right to be home with her children at night. I want to stress that is an important plank of democracy. Workers' rights, human rights. So, sisters and brothers, let us not be fooled by this talk of democracy. And before I bring my brother Lincoln on, let me say one thing. I'm going to pick this up tomorrow night. You cannot have peace in a country until the issue of power is settled. We are trying to bring about peace in Guyana with an unequal access to power. Nowhere in the world, at no time in history, has there ever been a peace based on inequality and unequal access to resources and unequal access to the protection of the law. And I'm going to pick that up. You cannot have peace in Guyana until the issue of equal access to power is settled. And I'm not talking about the power to kill and the power to discriminate. I'm talking about the power to determine who gets what, when, and how. That's the power I'm talking about. Don't want power if it's the power to kill people's children. I don't want power if it's the power to discriminate. I don't want power if it's the power to deny workers the right to collective bargaining. That is not the power I'm talking about. The power that I am talking about, it is the power to determine who gets what, when, and where, and how. The power of distribution of economic resources, the power of distribution of cultural resources. Yesterday it was human lobby. That's a cultural resource. It means that the people who belong to that religion, their religion is being given national prominence. Diwali is coming up. And I want to remind the PNC, sometimes I think, get caught up too much in some other things. And without pointing out that all those holidays, they weren't instituted by the PPP. Humanabi and Diwali and all Pagua and all those holidays were instituted under Burnham, the PNC. And I think sometimes the PNC play around too much without making the case that with all their faults, and they had tremendous faults, I fought against them, that when you're talking about racial inclusivity, their record is a better record. And I hope PNC people are listening to urge their leaders to speak truth. Anyhow, tomorrow night I'm going to continue this conversation. Let's bring in our guest for tonight for the interview, Brother Lincoln Lewis. Lincoln, how are you, my brother?
I am not well.
Talk to me.
I am raring to fight.
Well, there you go. There you go. We stand in the same line. You heard part of what our friend Freddie called my racial sermon. You heard part.
Well, I want to tell you this. If speaking the truth and advancing the cause of advancing the cause for justice in this society is racial sermon, then continue doing what you're doing.
Thank you, my brother. Thank you. Listen, I want us to start off tonight talking about what is happening to Brother Rickford Burke. And I've named this program tonight, The Persecution of Brother Rickford. Why the persecution of Rickford Burke? Why the persecution of Rickford Burke? We seem to have lost Brother Lincoln there for a minute. He's going to come back on. But we're talking here about the persecution of Brother Rickford Burke because it's a violation of the brother's human right. The violation of the brother's freedom of speech. A violation of the brother's right to have access to resources that every other citizen has access to. And that is equality before the law. Equality before the law. The PPP has gone after this brother with a vengeance. And it's nauseating. It's nauseating. Let me bring Brother Lincoln back on. Why are they persecuting Rickford Burke, Lincoln?
The PPP, the only thing they know, these are a bunch of cowards, you know. When they're in opposition, they run for cover under the Constitution and the laws. And when they're in power, when they get the all in executive power and pulling those levers, they use the same laws and state agencies to go after people who are critical of what they do, who ask them to account. This question here, why they're going after Burke, is basically Burke has been asking them to account for their stewardship. Burke has been questioning the decisions of the decisions that the government makes. That's all they know. They know the only thing they know well. They talk to you well when they're in opposition. They say all the right things. But when they're in government, or the executive, they do something else. They do the opposite. These are men and women who believe in abusing state apparatus for their own purpose, their own self-serving interests. Burke get under their skin. And same way as how Burke attacked him, Burke has a mouthpiece, and more so, they're like the international community to believe that they are decent and law-abiding people. Burke having a megaphone, and more so, Burke have access to the corridors of power in one of the governments in the West, and they feel that he shouldn't. What he have been doing is seeking to tarnish his character, to say that he's a villain, he's a no good, he's a scoundrel. That's what they're attempting to do here. But the same people who are attempting to do, the same people who were charged and fight to hell, not to be tried, not to get in front of the magistrate or the judge to be tried. They try everything to do that. And when the government change, why immediately, and they get access to state power, what they did is to get somebody to drop the charges, drop all the charges against them. Abuse of authority. These guys don't govern, you know. These are rulers. They don't, that question, they don't satisfy the requirements of a government. They are rulers, and they get all the attributes of being rulers.
Lincoln Lewis, trade unionist, political commentator, and activist weighing in on the persecution of Rickford Burke. Lincoln, I am still to work out in my mind what is the crime that Rickford Burke has committed. I think they're saying that Rickford Burke tried to shake down somebody and all that stuff. I am still to figure out what the crime is. Have you figured it out?
I know what, I'll tell you something. Burke hasn't shaken down anybody or tried to shake down anybody. It basically, the crime that Burke has committed is that he has challenged the dictatorship. He has challenged these men and women who are abusing the good nature of the people of this country under the guise that they are governing. That's what they're doing. That's what Burke done. That's the crime Burke has committed. I have not seen anything that they have produced to say that Burke tried to shake down somebody. And these wicked men who, when Sue made the allegation against Mr. Jagdio, they didn't call him in. They didn't call Sue in. They didn't call Ling in, right? Jagdio in. But because they're trying to trump up something now. I saw the thing where they said Burke, his last address was no address was Batika. Did they go there? They're a bunch of wicked men. Wicked to the highest extent, man. Why these guys gotta be doing these things? Why people want you swear to uphold the law from the commissioner of police and all the officers them who were there, and they turn him back to use their privileged position to harass citizens? Is this service and protect? Is this to serve and protect? No way. Who they're protecting? Big money and the privilege. The small man has no say in this here. But I'll tell you what, we have to rally around Burke. We have to rally around Burke. We have to challenge them, let them bring the evidence out there. I know they don't have. I know they will write all the things. This is how they stay. These guys are these are a bunch of cowards, schemers. We have to do something. We can't sit down and allow them to do what they are doing to Burke. We have to stop it. And every law-abiding citizen must remember this, that when they do that to Burke and we allow them to get through in demonizing and defiling this man, your turn will come. Today for Burke, tomorrow will be for you. And all these people who believe that Burke shouldn't talk, then I want to tell you something. Burke ain't talking for himself, you know, he's talking for all of you. Because Burke can sit down in New York in a cushy office and earn a cushy salary and forget all of us here. That's a man who have put his character on the line to fight for this nation. And this nation, the people of this nation must recognize that Burke has not been standing for only one set of people. He has stood up against the previous government about things that he felt they were not right. And he's standing up now When Burke attacked the previous government, the opposition would form the government now had seen him as an ally. You know, I always tell people, you know, I've been in this business a long time. I remember when during the PNC time, before 1992, when I go out with my comrades from Gao, when we go in the Sugar Belt, I remember even Chelly J. Gunn, he used to give weight to me to be the main speaker. And when they came to power, the first trade unionists that they sing loud to put the entire state machinery on was Lincoln Lewis. I know these people out there, Steve. They know that what you're saying is the truth. Because it is supported by evidence. They know that. They will embrace it when they're in opposition. But when the moment that they form the executive, they will go after you with a vengeance. I have seen it. I've experienced it. I know these men and women. Let me tell you what. If honesty fall on their head and they put their hand on it, they will not recognize it. If it fall on their lap, they will look down and they will say they never see it. This is how these people operate. And they have a process now that they have embarked upon, as I described it some time ago. It is a well-orchestrated program, well conceptualized, developed, and each day they seek to implement it. A program of economic genocide against this African community and those who support them.
Economic genocide, and this is not a new term that Lincoln is using here tonight. He used it way back to explain what was happening in the country. And I can tell you, Lincoln Lewis is not a just come when it comes to protesting. What I know and what many of you may not know is going right back to the Burnham government. Lincoln Lewis stood up against that government, and I'm sure that Lincoln supported the PNC in those days, but as a trade unionist. As a trade unionist, he stood against the party that he may have voted for. And for me, that is always a test of integrity, political integrity. It's not just your opposition of the party that you may not have voted for, but it's your opposition against the party, your opposition to the party that you may have voted for. And I remember in 1984 or 85, Lincoln will remind me which one of the years, when we all marched on May Day. May Day, a workers' day, not National Day. And so Lincoln's opposition to government is based on principle. And the fact that today, these youngsters who don't understand our history, who don't know our history, try to compartmentalize people. I think it's a real tragedy. Lincoln, let me pose this question to you. You may have heard about this Professor Randolph, I forgot his name. He works at the office of the president, and apparently he sent his letters to Stabrook News criticizing civil society. Stabrook News said they wouldn't carry it, and Freddie Kissoon has taken up the case. The very Freddie Kissoon who told the country that during the election, the ownership and management of Skyshore News took a position that the elections were being rigged and that anybody who doesn't toe that line, they will not be accommodated in the paper. You were a casualty, I was a casualty, Adam Harris was a casualty. And Kissoon agreed with that. Now Stabrook News is doing the same thing. I'm not saying they're right. I'm not saying they're right. But here is he hammering Stabrook News for something that Kaichor did and he agreed with. Comment on that for me.
You know, I have reached the point where I don't even read Freddie these days, because I don't believe that Freddie is guided by universal principles. I don't believe so. I don't believe he's guided by laws and those things. I don't believe he understands those things. What is guided by is how he feels and his hatred for some people in society. You know, I remember this man writing to say that he don't be paid by Kaichor News. But I remember this is the same man in 2012 when he and Glenn Lal fell out, and Ben Scott and others were trying to get them back together. When we came from Linden the night, the evening, you were there.
Yes.
The first thing, we stopped at the place opposite Parliament, and somebody was saying that Kaichor News pay back pay, or what you call it, some sort of money. And he asking how much, because you understand me, he will be paid. But subsequently, when you corner him, he said, you don't be paid. These guys are dishonest. And I'll tell you something, David. Get it very clear. I see you on Freddie show, Ian Gildari. I will have nothing to do with Freddie Kissoon, and I want it to be made very clear. I don't trust him. You cannot discuss anything in confidence with him. And he continues to misrepresent people's position. I will have nothing to do with Freddie. I've made my point. I don't want to discuss Freddie. Leave him where he is. This is the man. This is the man. This is the man. This is the man. When this man failed to submit, went on sabbatical, failed to submit his research, when the people at university confronted him, the report from the people was that he said, check Stabrook News, he just be writing in the air. That is his research. When they came to the council to fire him, Lincoln Lewis was the representative for Labour. I asked them, I said, did you call this man? Did you write this man? And all the questions I asked, they said no to it. I said, how can you come here to tell us that we must agree for you to this man to be fired? That saved his butt. And then turn him back and want to curse us. And then telling people that who is honest and who is dishonest. I know the man. And to hell was him. I don't wish anybody bad, but I'll tell you again, one man, I will never be seen in the same company, in the same room, one-on-one with, and I will not shake his hand. I don't take those positions, but I finish it freely.
There you go. Lincoln Lewis, and who better to say it, because these were comrades. Lincoln, the IMC at Linden, the people there are taking action. Bring us up to date.
Let me tell you what. And here again, the PPP gone. And when they say when first bell ring, you don't hear, you know. When second and third bell ring, then you don't hear. These people went on strike. 3 weeks ago, the people on strike. The union wrote the companies the same day that they went on strike. And that letter was copied to the chief labor officer. The general manager, by the Friday, the general manager met with the union. And we put to them the terms that we wish them to consider for resumption. He left with the understanding that he will go and consult and return by Monday next week. We didn't hear from him. We gave him Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We didn't hear from him. The union wrote the chief labor officer on Friday morning. The chief labor officer set a meeting for Monday. We met on Monday. And when they met on Monday, the chief labor officer had both parties in the room, and he gave a number of suggestions were made, and he agreed that is that can be used as the terms for resumption. The general manager said he cannot sign the document. He will have to go back to his principals, who he said are the new interim management committee. He said they have a chairman, but you don't know if they have other members. But he's going to the CCDO, whose office is in the same compound, just another building in that compound. And they will get back to us. They hope that the matter can be resolved by Friday, by Monday afternoon or by Tuesday. Monday, Tuesday, we didn't hear from them. We did hear from them, I believe, was last week around Thursday. The general manager, the new chairman came, and she said she wanted to talk with the workers. She met with the workers, and then she asked the union representative Sampson at Linden, Charles Sampson. So she would like to have a copy of the terms of resumption. Sampson, my understanding, said to her she should get that from the Labor Department. But she insisted she get it. So I called her, and I spoke with her. She said she needs something from the union. So I sent it to her, put it on a letterhead, and I sent it what the terms of resumption are. Mark well, this terms of resumption is not the original terms that the union put forward. This is what has been hammered out by the chief labor officer and the general manager and the union. Only to be told today that they did not discuss it because they said you don't have a signature from the union. Let me point out to you, I've been in this business for a long time. We don't sign proposed term of resumption. You put the terms there. These are the terms. You don't sign it, it's not a letter. Secondly, when there's a strike, you don't wait for weeks and days before you meet. You meet almost immediately. The chief labor officer get the letter the Wednesday. He said get a copy of it. He never called the union. Never did anything until the 2 weeks after. A week after, the other week, Friday, when we send in another letter, ask him to conciliate. I've been in this business. I've seen men at work. I've seen labor officers coming in. There's a strike. And he walk into the union hall and he talk with the union reps them. And he leave the union hall and go to the management. And he come back with his own document. Said, these are the things I'm proposing. These people, they're so steep in the damn politics of division and divisiveness that they can't see, they can't understand, they can't do anything. Today, we are now told that the new chairperson said, in fact, I said to the chairperson this morning, I made a point to her that, look, the document belongs to the Labor Department, which is housed in the Ministry of Labor. And because of that, what you should be having is a document coming from them. She's left with the understanding this morning that she will be talking with the Chief Labor Officer to see what's the position and get back to me. I have not heard from her as yet. So there is where we are on this matter. But we have to ratchet up. We have to ratchet up this whole arrangement. We can't say no and have it like that. That's the position.
Thank you very much there, Lincoln. It's coming to the end of the year. And it's going to be that time when the government is going to be giving out bonuses and all that kind of stuff.
Hold on, David.
Yes.
David.
Yes.
That's a cooperative, you know. You don't belong to the government.
Right.
Let me tell you something what people don't know. That the cooperative at Wisma that distributes electricity belong to the people who are consumers of it. It's the people co-op, not their own. So every member, as long as you buying electricity from the co-op, by law, you are a member of the co-op.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to look at it differently. As I said earlier, you got to ratchet up the pressure now. You got to ratchet up the pressure. People believe that some people business not important in this country, not important in this country. That's how they behave. We got to show them that our business is damn well important.
The leader of the Public Service Union has been making some statements in recent time. Has the government made any attempt to meet with the public service unions to iron out this issue of pay raises?
I want to tell you, David, I don't expect this government to meet with the public service. I want to prove me wrong. Here how the PPP operate. Where there are a sizable or where there are a group of workers that are predominantly African and they are led by the unions are led by African people. They will decide that they will not deal with the union leadership. What they are saying to us is that you can elect who the hell you want.
Yeah.
We are going to select for you who must lead you. And that's a part of the program of genocide, economic genocide in this country. They don't want to meet with the Public Service Union. And even if they meet, you know what they will do? They will have 2 meetings and say the time is too short. And we have decided that you're going to get X amount of percentage. It's them decide, it's them money, it's them country. They want to treat people as these people are their subjects. This has to change. This situation got to change. And people quick, today I was making a point to 2 comrades. 2 or 3 comrades I was talking with. 2 comrades, and they were telling me about March. As long people behave in a certain way, let me tell you something. Let me tell the workers in this country something. Protests don't have rules. And those people telling you that you mustn't march, it's because they bread well butter, they get milk at the table, and they get Springfield mattress to lay down on. Their bed well make up. Let me tell you this. I believe in protests. Whatever the consequences are when we get outside there, so be it. Nobody, don't start that you can protest. It's only the army and the police just march. Look straight ahead without coming out the line. Because that's the nature of them. But when they're doing that, they're not protesting. There's a part of the daily operation. Protests, when you go outside there, what so the hell happen, so be it. So be it. We got to stop this nonsense. You know what happened? Giving people the assurance. Let me tell you this. Those people who are telling people they must not protest, let me tell you this. I have a message for them. We're going to protest at the appropriate time. We will have to protest. Right? If you believe, if they believe, in fact, that we shouldn't protest, let's go and tell the masters that they treat us differently. Don't discriminate against us. Don't violate, don't transgress our rights. Don't violate the laws. Don't abuse your privilege. Stop the nonsense. You go and tell them. Don't come and tell people. And I hope trade union leaders begin to tell them when they run to their office, when they hear that there's that people will protest, they run to your office. Tell them to get out, because when you are being discriminated, when the membership of the unions are being discriminated against, the rights are being transgressed, and the laws are being violated, they don't say any damn thing. This thing got to stop.
Lincoln, what's going on with, and thanks for that candid report there on the government's relationship with the Public Service Union. And it's a PPP relationship that goes back to the 1960s. People forget the hostile attitude of the 61 to 64 government to the public servants that led to the 80-day strike in the first instance. And slogans like Notre Dame sent more, etc., etc. And that attitude to public servants came right through the 1999 strike and the tribunal that was set up, arbitration committee that was set up, and they gave their recommendations. And you can correct me if I'm wrong here, that here we are 23 years later, and the government is not the PPP government then, and now they have not honored the arbitration recommendations. Am I wrong?
A number of the recommendations were never honored. And let me tell you something, David. David, let me tell you this. 1963 strike, there are people who counted as 80 days. For bauxite workers at Cocoa, it was 90 days. They spent 10 more days off the job. Said that all men who broke the strike must be removed. In the 9th day, they decided, after that, when it was 89, they decided, the company said they're going to transfer them to Everton, and they send them. And I want to tell you something. Those men that they sent to Everton, they became militant unionists after that. So we have to take action on some people. And at this point, I want to make it. You know, there are people who believe that there are some people who believe they can go there or putting themselves out there to talk about, to say that this government is not discriminating and to say what we must do about them. I want to tell them something. I want a warning for them. The workers of this country didn't elect them to lead no union. The citizens of this country didn't elect them to speak on their behalf. I want to tell them, stop putting yourself out to say you're talking for us. You're not speaking for us. Stop being used. Stop being used by men and women who don't care a damn about yourself and your children. What they want is you to do things that can make them comfortable or to cause people not to come and demand what is just and fair for themselves. We got to stop this nonsense.
Lincoln, let me ask you this question. What's happening in the oil and gas industry as far as representation of workers there? I know it's a new industry and the various unions would be trying to represent workers. Yes.
David,
yeah.
that is a burning issue.
Yes, talk to me about it.
Here what happened. The tier 1 companies have contracted out. When I say tier 1, like Exxon, Schlumberger and them, they have contracted out much of the services to contractors. Like you may have about 5 or 6 contractors that are providing labor for the oil and gas industry. So the employees, most of the employees, are employed by those contractors. The Guyana Bauxite and General Workers were the first union that went into the oil and gas industry. It went and it organized all the drivers at Cyril Taxi Service. Cyril's Taxi Service submitted its books to the what we call it, to the Trade Union Recognition Board. And when they were finished doing the survey, the union had, when they were finished doing that survey, the union had 60-something% of the workers who are members of the union. But the law calls for 40% for you to get recognition.
Mm-hmm.
You get recognition. After we start to negotiate, Cyril's went to court to find reason why they shouldn't negotiate with us. In fact, they had the temerity to call me a day and say, let me don't pressure them. They're going to write a check and give me. I said, I didn't call you, but I didn't get negotiation for check or a recognition agreement for check. I don't take you past me. Let me tell you what this guy do. They wait until they start to challenge this thing during the previous trade union recognition board. And when they start to do this thing, they came with a lawyer, we started to talk with that at the board. The board life came to an end and the government changed. When the government changed, Nanda Gopal became the chairman, together with some people from the private sector, the employers organization, and 3 representatives from labor. The 3 representatives are C. Paul Narayan, the president of GAU, Carville Duncan, the general secretary of the GLU, and Sherwood Clark, who is now the general secretary of the CCW.
All 3 of them are from Fitaga.
Yes. Well, let me tell you further what happened. We received a letter one day which says that the union, the Trade Union Recognition Board, has de-recognized the union.
Lord God.
So we write them back and we ask them, show me which part of the law says you can do that. give you the authority to do it. You know when I write back and say they can't show me the law, but they say it was unanimously agreed that the union be de-recognized. And when I finish there, GAU start to running now to do mobilization, to mobilize workers. And they seek now to want to, the minister now become the chief facilitator to give GAU an opportunity to organize the workers. This is the, I'm raising this for you to understand what is happening in the island gas. This is about naked, wicked, and bombastic politics. And trade union leaders are in collusion with the government to deny workers the right to a union of their choice. They are denying them freedom of association. That is what we are confronted with. Well, let me tell you, all is not lost. We shall continue regardless of the circumstances and move ahead to do what we got to do. The people in the workers in the oil and gas industry, I want to say to you, you call me day or night. My number is 697-1102. We're not here to make life difficult for the employers. We are here to operate within the purview of the Constitution and the laws of this land. We are here to avoid to stop any level of exploitation. We are here to avoid you people being exploited. That's our position.
That's our
and
position.
My number is 697-1102.
697-1102. Lincoln Lewis here, General Secretary of the Trade Union Congress, long-standing trade unionist, invoking the 1848 Communist Manifesto, workers of the world unite, you have nothing to lose but your chains. And as they were gunning for Martin Luther King in 1968 in Memphis, as he stood with the garbage collection workers, said there is dignity in all labor. Labor continues to be an issue, the issue of workers. As I said at the beginning, that we cannot talk about democracy in a country when the basic right of workers to bargain collectively for their wages is not being respected. It's a right that is not a bourgeois right. It's a right that workers have lost their lives, they've given their blood for. It's a right that Guyana was invaded by the British for. The right to collective bargaining. That is an important pillar of democracy. Lincoln Lewis, closing thoughts?
We are standing on the precipice where they will be, if there's no change, a tangling of the forces, industrial, political, and social. But let me say it to you. Critchlow, Hubert Nathaniel Critchlow, in 1905, challenged the merchant class when there were no laws, when there wasn't an 8-hour work day, when there was never a 40-hour work week. He challenged the merchant class when there were no rules in the game and humbled them to come to the table. The people who today are taking the opportunity to transgress rights, violate laws, they are the beneficiary to the struggles of the labor movement. Because at that time, you hadn't a Chelly J. Gun. You hadn't a Thomas Bonham. None of them were born when this movement started, when this trouble started. I want to tell them that Lincoln Lewis is standing on the shoulders of a great man. The man who made trade union possible for the British Empire. And I'm saying the British Empire, not Diana alone. The British Empire, he made it possible. He was the first man who established a union. And followed by Australia and other countries in the British Empire. We will not allow his vision to be clouded, his dreams to be trampled on, and his works to be destroyed. This is time that we have to pick up the pieces and fight on. Aluta continue.
Aluta continue.
We shall overcome. Thank you, brothers and sisters.
1905, a very important year in the annals of Guyanese history, where Indian and African workers together confronted the British Empire, confronted the colonial masters. And that year, when Critchlow sounded the bell, is also an important year in the world, because we had the uprising, well, it wasn't Soviet Union then, it was in Russia then. Very pregnant year, 1905. Lincoln Lewis, of course, giving us an update on what's happening in the industrial front, what's happening on the front of the workers. Workers are the backbone of any society. Wealth is not created by capital. Wealth is created by labor. And if you begin your policies by asking, how does this affect labor? You're on the right track. If you start as the PPP is doing, and by asking, how does this affect capital? You're certainly on the wrong track. Good night. Tomorrow night, I come again, and we're going to continue the discussion tomorrow night about whether you can have peace in a country like Guyana without settling the question of equal access to power. And I have defined power not in its obscene and ugly manifestation. I've defined power in its transformational, its transformative manifestation. Power must be used in a transformational way. That is where we have to take Guyana. We are not going to advance Guyana. We are not going to develop Guyana unless the working people of all ethnic groups, all races in Guyana are given the respect that is due to labor. All labor is owed. All labor is owed compensation in Guyana. All labor, slave labor, indentured labor is owed compensation. Part of what this new oil and gas economy is about the condition of labor. They're trying to make our issue an anti-Indian issue. It's not an anti-Indian issue. They're trying to conflate the PPP with Indian. No, our issue is against injustice. And the greatest injustice that's been done is being done to labor. African labor may be the immediate target, but at the end of the day, the attack on labor will work against development in our country. We're going to continue tomorrow night to talk about this issue. Good. Remember, we love you. We love you because without you, there is no country. Without you, the workers, the toilers, the sufferers, the ordinary people, we are not going to get any development in this country. Good night.